Well, I have a confession to make. I am a plonker. I had the episode ordering all wrong for this series because I put last episode as number 4 and it was actually number 3. So this is going to be number 3 now. Be our little secret, okay? So, today's video, I want to talk about a game that came out in the 1990s. A very interesting time for gaming because new media was taking over in the form of compact discs and eventually DVDs, and you had new players in the game such as your ever-growing PC market, and which had more of a dominance as the Amiga and the Atari ST had basically fallen by the wayside at that point, especially in European regions. But also you had the rise of the Sony PlayStation, and you had lots of experimentation of different formats of different genres of games. And I don't know of any other TV show which had a game that was so closely at that point involved with the original writing staff, creators, and obviously the cast and crew. This full motion video, although not unique because there's other games that preceded it like Myst, Exile and a plethora of others, was very unique in the sense that it was like an episode of the show and really felt at home as part of the X-Files mythos.
Have we met?
Yeah, we both worked on that kidnapping last year, remember?
Sorry.
No problem. It was a big team.
Set in the 3rd season of the X-Files, the X-Files game takes you on an adventure to find Mulder and Scully in the shoes of 2 new characters called Craig Wilmore and Mary Astradorian.
So, what do you think?
What was that?
I have no idea, but his injuries are identical to those from the Terracon, and all of the gas station's electronic equipment stopped working.
And has appearances by many of the X-Files regulars.
I'm gonna pretend you're not doing that.
So I'm Jared Walters for Blind Man Plays. This is the new episode 3 of Beyond the Game. Don't tell anyone. And this is 6 reasons why the X-Files game was a brilliant but failed experiment.
Going on here. I think someone's stolen the bodies from the Terracan. You two stay here. I'll get to the bottom of this. I'll let you know if I find anything.
So point 1, the plot. It feels like an episode. So you start off as a normal workday in the Seattle field office, and you realise that your person in charge, your boss, is basically talking to a bigwig from Washington, which turns out to be Assistant Director Walter Skinner. So throughout the first part of the game, you're exploring different sites of the last known whereabouts of Mulder and Scully with Skinner, and it ultimately leads you to the warehouse in which they disappeared, that you see from the opening credits.
It would be helpful to know what case they were working on.
Yes, it would be helpful. Listen, I'd appreciate it if you didn't refer to them in the past tense.
You follow the plot lines and investigation, which leads you to partner up with Detective Astradorian, and she basically helps you solve some of the murders that have happened surrounding this case and surrounding the disappearance of our favourite 2 FBI agents.
See these outlines here on the side of the cabin?
Yeah, it's kind of frightening, isn't it? What causes it?
I have no idea.
It reminds me of pictures I've seen of Hiroshima.
I don't want to let too much go of the plot and the characters. There is a Let's Play on this channel, which will be replaced very shortly by, I'm going to do it all in one video, like a marathon. I'm going to do that with the same with New Ghostbusters 2 as well, and the previous Let's Plays from this channel. Just put them all into one video so you can just watch it through if you want to. But it is like watching an X-Files episode, but eventually you are led to become very much involved in the tropes of the conspiracy, the alien bounty hunter, the black oil, and this is very much sort of capitalizing on the X-Files lore up as far as the 3rd season. So essentially, it is like an episode of the show, and the way in which it interacts gameplay wise works very, very well. It works like a point and click adventure as you are walking around the environments, which are represented by what look like digital photographs basically. But the style and the lighting and the way in which the game is built, the cinematography, really makes you feel engrossed in the plot. And even though there are some limitations, I actually would say this works better than the second X-Files game out in Resist or Serve, which had sprites or had digital representations of Mulder and Scully walking around the town. I always felt at this point, with the survival horror genre, I mentioned in the Resident Evil video I did that I felt like I was in an episode of the X-Files. I don't think the technology was there for it to work. And also, David Duchovny's acting in Resist or Served is absolutely terrible, and Gillian Anderson's isn't much better. This was definitely the better of the 2 X-Files games that come out, and although the second game actually does buy into some of the mythology, it's not as intricate as this one. This one really sort of like capitalizes on what was going on at the time. However, although that makes it quite successful in the way the story is told, it's also its downfall, which I will come to a little bit later.
Men have died in order to possess this. I'm going to loan it to you for a short time, because without it, there's no way that you could survive.
Point 2 is the characters. Now, a lot of the original cast reprised their roles. Stephen Williams reprised his role as Mr. X. Obviously, Mitch Pileggi reprised his role as Assistant Director Walter Skinner. You even have a cameo from Agent Pedro, God bless him, who obviously met his end in the 4th season of the show.
I've completed the preliminary analysis of the blood sample from your office. I'm afraid I got some bad news. It looks like that blood belongs to Agent Scully.
But you also have some really interesting side characters. Agent Cook, the dynamic between Wilmore and Astrodorian is cute. It's like you can see that there's a romantic tension between them, and there's especially a nice little payoff to that in the last scene of the actual game, with the conversation between you and your boss. But I would definitely say that the characters that are added do enrich the elements of the show.
We should probably wait until this case is wrapped before we go tampering with the evidence.
That brings me to point 3, which is it makes the best of its gameplay. It makes the best of what it has. Look at the games that came out around 97, 98. Look at the voice acting in Resident Evil and compare it to the voice acting of this. There's no comparison. The voice acting in this game is absolutely top notch. From the guy that you talk to in the crime lab and their little sort of back and forth, the back and forth between you and Cook, or back and forth between you and Skinner, this is as well acted as any X-Files episode. That does help because there are certain times where you have to go and repeat certain bits, or make different choices, or choices will land you in the wrong position, might end up getting you blown up, or end up you getting shot. Even these sort of scenes are really sort of well done, and kind of feel like they don't feel false at any point during the show. It actually feels like you've met that end in a sense, and it really brings that together. With regards to there are bits of the game that can seem a little bit sluggish, and that's just down to the navigation and how they did. This is something that was typical of a lot of point and click games at that time, and I suppose it's why it was quite one of those subgenres that you either loved it or you didn't. You're not here really for the gameplay as much as you're here for the story, and it's the balance between the two that actually sort of helps move this game along. Although there are some really good sort of quick time events. There's a good shootout sequence halfway through the game, which is quite interesting, and there's a nice little sort of chase sequence at the end of the game. So it does try and push the boundaries quite a bit of what this sort of genre is capable of. However, the full motion video sort of adventure was, along with the point and click, were very much dying genres at the time. And again, I'll come to that as we come further into the video.
Hey, Sleeping Beauty.
Wilma, how's it going?
Good. How are you? You don't look so good.
I don't feel so hot.
What's wrong?
I don't know. I think I'm coming down with the flu or something.
This brings me to my next point, which is the game's uniqueness. The uniqueness comes from the fact it's part of the show, and it comes from the point of putting you in a place where, if you were a gamer, you felt as if you had something additional, you had something extra, you had something that a lot of people who may have enjoyed the X-Files in different formats didn't quite get. And, it feels completely and utterly in place within the mythology. Especially at this time. This is a time before the X-Files mythology became so convoluted.
Great, it looks like we got some uninvited guests.
NSA?
We're Jehovah's Witnesses. I need you to keep them busy for me long enough to meet Scully back at that facility, then you get away and meet us there.
Hold on. I was assigned to find you and Scully. I've done that. I'm out of here.
What kind of attitude is that? The game's not over yet. I just want to wait around for the payoff?
However, and this is point 5, it suffers from basically what the X-Files as a whole kind of suffered from, which is putting far too much into the actual experience. The experience of the game, playing it through without sort of dying, if you do everything right, will probably take you about, let's say, about 2 hours, maybe 3. But at the point of, like, say, 3 episodes of the show, I would have said there's enough content there. If they made it into an episode, it would be like 3 episodes of the show then, right? So, but ultimately, there's some tropes that just don't need to be there. The radiation, the black oil kind of work fine on their own. You don't need this kind of subplot with the stiletto and the alien bounty hunter, or someone taking sort of Cook's persona, because why would someone go and take Cook's persona? I suppose it's kind of alluded to that Mulder did try and contact the Seattle police office, the Seattle FBI office, and they just sent more NSA agents to create more havoc. So it could be the fact that, like, are we supposed to think that the alien bounty hunter was monitoring Mulder at this point, and then goes and sort of like replaces Cook at an earlier point in time? The thread about Cook being a threat just doesn't make sense. If you were to do a sequel, I would still have the uneasy relationship and the sort of implied sort of like uneasiness between the two agents. But I think the betrayal of Agent Cook could have been something you set aside for a sequel. It could be something that's more implied, like at the end of the game with the final meeting between Mr. X and Agent Wilmore, it is implied that they were thinking of doing a sequel to this game that involved, or doing something that followed up on the stories of these agents involved. But it's just, and I understand that, like, the action sequence at the end sort of involved, Cook was there to make that much more sort of a bit more sort of interactive. But it just, to me, from a plot perspective, it just didn't make that much sense. And that's not really set up very well in the plot of the actual game, and it's kind of a missing thing, and it lets things down quite a bit. You could have had Mr. X give information about the facility. You could say that they were transporting something there or something, and Mulder has basically gone on ahead, and that's, that could lead to then him sort of being contacted by the lone gunman, and the lone gunman sort of saying, that we've last spoke to Mulder or something, that's what he was, or the evidence could point to it with the Roush fella that they were following. You know, there's other ways that could have worked. Mulder could still be infected by the black oil. Perhaps like other, you know, you could have had like a squad coming in and there's like a bit of a shootout at the end, you know, a little bit like what happens, but you just didn't need that sort of final thing with Agent Cook. That could, if you scrubbed that part of it, I think you would have had a much better sort of gameplay experience and just kept Cook as an enigmatic character in his own right.
I guess I know what you want. Hold on a second, I'll go get it.
I think not. You'd better keep it. You're gonna need it again. Soon.
Ultimately, and this is point 6, the game was too ambitious. It was a very unique game because it was at a point where this sort of genre of gameplay was dying, and dying very quickly, because we had the ability now, especially with the PlayStation 2 coming out within the next 2 years, of creating more complex and dynamic gaming environments that ultimately, you know, served as better gameplay experiences. And the point and click genre basically sort of died a death around about the same sort of time. So it is kind of a, you know, it was kind of a game that, although won or was nominated for quite a few awards and actually did very well commercially, like hitting, I think it was number 3 in the number 1. It was number 1 in the British charts. I think it was like number 3 in the American charts. And lasted for a good couple of months, sort of within like the top 20. So it did very well commercially, but ultimately, you know, it was a show that by the time it was a game that by the time you got around to making a sequel, the show was in a much different place, because not only were they making the game at that point, they were actually shooting a movie. X-Files was starting to dwindle in popularity a little bit after its 5th season, and by the time you probably would have got around to making that, you would have, you know, probably been in an era where David Duchovny wasn't actually part of the show. So I think that although it would have been great to see a follow-up to this game, you know, ultimately it was released at the wrong place at the wrong time, and, you know, will go down in history as one of those sort of enigmatic games. But if you honestly can get hold of a PlayStation or PlayStation emulator or a copy of it on PC, it is worth a couple of hours of your time just to play through it, especially if you're a fan of the show. It is literally like treating yourself to a couple of hours of X-Files goodness that perhaps you might not have experienced before. So that's the video, guys. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section below, and I want to say thank you for the support for the other videos that you've seen on the channel, especially the Ghostbusters video and the Resident Evil videos have really sort of taken off and given me a bit more faith in this little series that I'm doing. There's more series on the way. I just need to sort of get my ass in gear and sort of get some things recorded, because I want things recorded ahead of time. And thank you for subscribing to the channel. My aim is to make 1,000 subscribers by within the next sort of few months, hopefully, and any way you guys can help me do that, I greatly appreciate it. What was your favourite point and click adventure? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you soon for another video. Take care. God bless.